In 1971, December 7th, I reported to the AFI station in Syracuse, New York. Uh, to be drafted. I had beat them out in 68 and 69. They left me alone in 70. But I was put on the extended draft priority list. Though I had arthritis or have arthritis in both knees and flat feet from birth, which are both 4Fs, which means you're not fit for military service. But the powers that be wanted me to serve. They wanted to get me off the street. In those days, I was deep into the movement, civil rights, the Equal Rights Amendment, the Greenpeace, 18-year-old vote, you name it. Fight against the Vietnam conflict, all of that. But things had slowed down. The government had devised a plan to squash the movement, as it were. Each different organization like LULAC and NAACP and SNCC and Greenpeace, these and other different organizations that had banded and joined together in this fight for rights for everyone. Government, J. Edgar Hoover came up with a plan, him and Nixon, to divide and conquer. So they made deals in back rooms with all the different organizations and promising their piece of the pie, not knowing that what was promised, that piece of pie, was the same piece of pie everybody was being offered. And so when these deals were made, they were made with the express concern that after you make this deal, after we give you this, okay, quit the streets. Okay, stop your protests. And this tactic worked. By the summer of 71, things had really, really slowed down as far as demonstrating against the war and demonstrating for these different initiatives. Even though in August of 71, the 18-year-old vote did pass. It stayed for a while. Then they repealed it some years later. Even though at 18 you're old enough to go into the military and die for this country. You're old enough to vote, but you're not old enough to drink. You're not truly legal until you're 21. But I digress. Went to the AFI station in December 7th, 71. And I told the guys, I said, now, my father is going to come in and he's going to look for me and he's going to go up to the folk in charge and ask where is his baby. And he's going to come up to me and he's going to give me a hug and a kiss. And, the folks laughed. They thought that was kind of funny. Up until when Dad came in, he did exactly what I said. He went up to the people and asked, where's his baby? And he came over and gave me a great big kiss. Now, my mother didn't come to the AFE station. We had already said our goodbyes. She didn't want to see me drive off. So we made it down to, where is that? Fort Dix, New Jersey. And being that it was so late in the year, it was approximately 3 weeks before the New Year's. And so when we got there, we didn't immediately go into training. The next training session wouldn't begin until right after New Year's. So for 3 weeks, we were pretty much, kind of on our own, but we're restricted to the areas that they told us we couldn't go to, the commissary, things like that. And this sergeant, black dude from, he had just got out of Vietnam and he was going home. And he was real short. He had like a few days. And they put him in charge of us in these old wooden barracks, 2-story barracks. And he said, hey, Fuzzy. And I'm trying to ignore this guy. He called me again and said, hey, Fuzzy. Of course, my name's not Fuzzy, so I didn't answer. But, just like in the movie, he looked right at me, and the rest of the platoon looked at me, and I couldn't ignore him no longer. I says, yes. Yeah, I said, yeah, what you want? He says, you're in charge of these guys. I said, I don't want to be in charge of nobody. He says, I didn't ask you anything. You're in charge of these guys. Now, I want y'all to clean these barracks and have them cleaned when I get back. Now, mind y'all, I had a full beard, a great big afro, and these guys, I'd already had told these guys what I thought of Vietnam, the United States, and what we were getting ready to go into. I told them this. I told them basically what I told my mother. My only reason for being in is to get out. And I'm coming home with no extra holes. And I mean that. And the guys, they kind of laughed and they said, you crazy. I said, yeah, I probably am, but I'm coming home with no extra holes. I then told the fellas, I said, look, let me tell you something. I'm not a soldier. I don't want to be a soldier. But he's put me in charge of you guys. And if you want to slide through this thing easy, I said, let me help you out. These are some things you need to do. I says, first of all, he told us to clean this barracks. We're not just going to clean the barracks. We're going to GI. We're going to clean everything that you can possibly touch. Whether you can see it, doesn't make a difference. If you can feel it, clean it. We clean door hinges. We clean underneath the bottom of the door, the top of the doors. I mean, we clean the lips underneath where the metal is folded up in a locker, where you have those metal lockers and it's got that little L shape and there's this little lip underneath. We cleaned even those areas. Places that you couldn't clean, we cleaned. Ourselves now, you watch what happens when we do this. We clean that whole barracks, top and bottom. We clean behind the urinals, inside the urinals. I mean, I had one guy who was cleaning the urinal. He acted like his hands was just too good to touch a toilet. And by this time, we had pretty much cleaned this. A couple hours later, we had cleaned most of the barracks. In fact, we were waiting for nothing but the toilet to be finished. And this guy, he was just acting like it was a disease. And I went over to him and I says, look, let me show you something, man. I showed him my hand. I said, see this? Got the rag. I put that rag on the hand, and I ran some hot water in the sink, and I put some bleach in the water. Dipped the rag in, wrung it out, and reached behind and cleaned underneath. And I said, see that? Watch, look, look, look. I says, look, let me show you something else. And after I did that, I got some soap and I washed my hands in that bleach water and wiped my hands, dried my hands with a towel. And I said, now, clean the urinal. Everybody is waiting on you. And he was kind of embarrassed. But one thing I always realized this, I learned this with my father. If you want somebody to do something, show them how. Okay? And that's one of the premises that I knew about the military, especially Army. You can't give a lawful order unless you can demonstrate what you want them to do. I knew that already. So, lo and behold, we finished. Well, the sergeant came back and he said, y'all finished? I said, yeah. And I said, no, you're not. I said, yes, well. See, because we didn't spend all day. He expected us to be, let's say, inefficient. He went around and he couldn't see anything. The beds were all made, everything. The lockers, the clothes were folded up in the locker. Maybe not military, but they were in an orderly fashion. He went through, couldn't find nothing. Then he got out his little white handkerchief and then really started to look for stuff. He couldn't find anything. After about 35, 45 minutes of looking, he called us in formation, and he told the guys, he told all of us, he says, look, let me tell y'all something. This is what I want you to do. You can go anywhere you want on post. If you want to go to the commissary, go. Now, I know that you're not supposed to leave this area. It says, but if anybody says anything to you about where you are or what you're doing, tell them Sergeant, whatever his name, said it was all right. He'd given us permission. Now, he had given us permission to go places when we were not even part of a unit. We were still in transition. We were transient. We didn't have the only leader we had was this sergeant who was getting ready to leave. But from that moment on, from that one incident, we went through basic training. Basic training was the best time I had in the service. We had, because we were in so early, a lot of the fellas decided to go home for 2 weeks. Even they just got there. I think 3/4 of the guys went home. And the few of us that stayed, the unit that we were going to be assigned to ended up having arms guard duty. They had to guard the armory, which required shifts of 72 hours. And so they divided us up so that we would go in and cover for this 2-week period. And so it would be half the cadre and half the officers. And they'd rotate. And then the trainees. Well, when we went in for these 72 hours, it was like having an encounter session, an encounter group. For me, at least, a lot of the guys, trainees, they just stayed over in the corner, just doing whatever they were doing. I was over with the NCOs and officers. talking politics and whatever was on our minds. You know, I knew these guys was human beings, so I didn't really were awed by the fact that they were a higher rank than I was. You know, I mean, I'm a trainee, so what does that mean? I'm a trainee and you're regular Army. What's that got to do with anything? So we talked. And I told them the same thing. I says, look, my only reason for being here is to get out. You know, I didn't ask for this. I don't want it. You know, if I'd wanted to be in the Army or any other military service, I would have went through college and come in as an officer. Why would I want to be a grunt? You know? So we got a good understanding to the point that my senior drill instructor, he was a pretty good guy. He was a pretty good guy. Really nice, and he even allowed me to borrow some of his civvies to go to Trenton, where I had relatives, you know, over a weekend. He said, "Don't tell nobody." Of course, why would I tell anybody? That's a good way to have a blessing, you know, really busted, you know, telling somebody your business. No, but I had a good experience in basic training. I was in charge of the guys, and we started in I think it was the 3rd of January, we started training. I tell you what, I had the best bunch of fellas you'd ever want to see. These guys, once they saw this, that if you work and you do a good job, you know, the powers that be will respect that. We went to what's that? What's that? What do you call that? It's been such a long time. We had to clean the kitchen. What's that called? KP. We had KP, Kitchen Patrol, and this sergeant had told us to clean, and he'd be back in a couple hours. I told the fellas, let's do to this kitchen and mess hall what we did to the barracks. And we did. We cleaned that joker spick and span. Fans, took the light fixtures down and cleaned those. I mean, we cleaned that joker just like we did the other places, except for it was greasy. But we cleaned it. When that sergeant came back, he went through that. He was an E6, E7. He was big time cook there in Fort Dix. He had high hopes to catch us failing. He couldn't find a thing. We didn't have KP again. And because of those two situations, we only had guard duty once. My group of guys were some of the I never served with them outside of basic training. But we could have went many places together had we had the Army decided to stick us, together. It was a good unit. But lo and behold, that wasn't for me. I ran into these two guys from Appalachia. They were E5s, brand new cadre sergeants. And, as it is in the military and basic training, they like to ride you. These guys was riding me one day when I was giving calisthenics. I was leading them, and dude came up and he started grilling me about I wasn't doing sit-ups wrong. Well, back then I was in pretty good shape. I could do 100 sit-ups in a minute, correct. And he just ran up side me, came down the other side, and I said, well, Sergeant, if I'm doing it wrong, would you show me how? And the man went to the CO and said that I was talking back to him, and I was being belligerent. and I got busted. From platoon guide to just a private E1. It was the happiest day of my life. And I say that because when I was in charge of these guys, I had to shave. I had a P3 medical profile for pseudofolliculitis, which means I got hair bumps real bad, and shaving would cause my face to look like raw hamburger. And but I shaved because I was telling my guys to shave. Now, who am I to tell these guys to shave and I don't shave? I had a P3 profile on my knees and on my feet. I could get out of any standing formation anytime I wanted to. Only thing I had to do was say my knees hurt or my feet hurt, and I sit down. They say, if all that was that bad, well, how'd you get in? Well, at the AFI station, they called an orthopedic surgeon in to verify that my condition was such that I could serve. He called me in the office and he told me to do a squat. I did a squat and stood up. He said, "Snap, you're okay." Even though I shouldn't even had seen a doctor. You know, arthritis, in fact, the medical history of that's just a stamp forever. You don't get to see anybody, but that's another story. But so I was relieved of all those duties. The sad thing is that the company commander, the XO, the CO, the command sergeant major, my SDI, and pretty much all of the cadre and the officers had the CO had come to me and said, "Look, man, I'm going to make you my field first." And that would be the trainee in charge of over all the trainees for a cycle. So I would have been in charge of like 600 trainees. And he says, after basic training, I'm going to send you to cadre school. You're going to come back at the E5 and you'll work 2 cycles. And then you will go to your advanced training. And I said, well, I was cool with that. But I tell you what, when those guys busted me, when they caused me to be busted, they relieved me of all that pressure. Because I would have stayed in. I'm not stupid. I would have retired out of the Army. I would have had E5 before going to my advanced training. So I would have had an E5 under 1 year. I would have either got that 6 after I finished my training, my advanced training, or upon entering in Vietnam. So I would have had E6 in less than 1 year. I would have stayed. I ain't no fool. But that didn't happen. These guys, after I got busted down to private E1, I went to, one morning I went to go on sick call because my wisdom teeth, both sides, had became impacted. And if anybody know about impacted wisdom teeth, you know it ain't no joke. And this is in February, late February in New Jersey. I mean, it was cold. I mean, I just could hardly walk. I mean, breathing hurt. And when I went down to go on sick call, these 2 sergeants decided they're going to call me all kinds of P's and B's and They weren't going to send me nowhere. Well, I beat a hasty retreat up to my room. I'm just sobbing. I mean, I hurt so bad. I mean, just even thinking hurt. And as I'm going upstairs, running upstairs, my SDI saw, and he stopped me and asked me what was going on. And I tried to blurt out in 2 seconds everything that had went on, and I could hardly. I mean, I could hardly move, let alone talk. But somehow he understood, and he said, "You go to sick call." And while I was telling him, I says, "Sarge, you need to keep them away from me. I'm going to kill these guys." He said, "You don't say that to a cadre." I said, "Sarge, you know that I know, and I'm not playing. I'm telling you, you need to keep these guys away from me. I'm going to kill these guys. Y'all are getting ready to send me to Vietnam to kill folk. I just will start it right here with somebody who I know is an enemy." And of course, I couldn't say it like that. You know, I mean, my mouth was all messed up, but he understood what I was saying. I went to that aid station, went on sick call, and you know they gave me some pills, and I was hurting so bad that I could even stand them giving me a shot, and you know, packed my mouth full of stuff, and you know, sent me out to the firing line because we were doing live fire. Well, when I came, I think it was about 4 or 5 hours later that I finally made it out there to the target area, target range, firing range, and they gave me my clip, and I looked down the line, and those two cadre, these guys were like almost a quarter mile to a half mile away from me, way down, you know, the firing line. And I was glad, because I was fully intending to shoot those guys if they were close. I would have shot them. Like I said, I just will start by killing them now. These guys had caused me a whole lot of pain, and I wasn't really tied too tight that day. But it was a shame, because those guys, they made themselves some lifelong enemies. The CO, the officers and the cadre, they did not appreciate these two guys and what they did to me, because they had high hopes. I don't know how the rest of their service was, but I know that they did not get whatever they thought they wanted to get out of you know, coming off of the training sessions and then going to their advanced trainings. The officers and cadre were really angry with these guys. But basic training was the best time that I had in the military. You know, if I had to say I had a good time, it's the best time I had in the military. My advanced training at Fort Sam wasn't too bad either. I was squad leader down there for a while. But the funniest thing about my advanced training in San Antonio was I'm looking for the Alamo. If y'all know San Antonio, just north in that square where the Alamo rests, there's a great big old building, and it's United States Post Office. It's not that now, but that's what it was back then. And the bus would let you off that came from Fort Sam, would let you off right there at that, in front of the post office. And I get dropped off there every weekend, and I'm looking for the Alamo. Now this is just, let me tell you, I'm looking for the Alamo. I'm reared in New York. The only pictures I've seen of the Alamo is on postcards and different other pictures, and it's semi-arid. There's desert around there, nothing but sand, and you see saguaro cactus, and prickly pear cactus, and you see horny toads and stuff like that in the pictures, and that's what I'm looking for. I didn't find the Alamo. Then one day, I'm sitting there, and I'm sitting there on this rock wall, and I asked this guy who's passing on the sidewalk. I says, "Man, where is the Alamo? I come down here every weekend. I'm looking for the Alamo. Where's the Alamo?" He says, "You're sitting on it." Like, I'm what? He said, "Yeah, man, you're sitting on it." I says, "This is the Alamo?" He says, "Yes." And you talking about being so anticlimactic. I was all the air in my sails just was gone. I'm looking at this thing and I'm saying, "This is the Alamo." I went in front. At that time you didn't have to pay to get in. I don't know about now, but that time you could just, walk in and do, just look around, and it was just, trinkets and stuff like that, and I'm saying, "So this is the Alamo." I said, I was just so heartbroken. Uh, I was heartbroken. That's kind of crazy. But that was probably the funniest thing about being in at Fort Sam. Uh, that was the funniest thing about being in Fort Sam. So anyway, that was my first taste of military before I went to Vietnam, and uh, but my advanced training was pretty good. I wanted to know how to take care of people, but there was a lot of guys that was mad at me because I was always asking questions. But silly me, I figured that if I'm going to have somebody's life in my hands, I at least need to know what I'm doing. Yes, I need to know. I need to know. So, next stop, Tan Son Nhut.